If someone would have said to me in October, by next February, all these companies are going to be using AI, I would have said, are you kidding? Even though I knew the state of the tools, it's going to take at least 2 or 3 more years. And suddenly here we are.
Welcome to the DesignRush podcast. I'm your host, Vianca Mayer. Today we're joined by Martin Waxman, an AI and digital marketing strategist, to explore the massive impact of relational AI on branding and human interactions. We'll discuss how advancements like Microsoft's Neural Studio are enabling AI to produce language and visuals that look and sound almost perfectly human.
So 11 Labs is one, Microsoft's Neural Voice Studio. You can create a custom brand voice. So you have these machines that now can turn out language, that can sound like us. You have videos, deep fake videos or synthetic media that looks like us, whether it's a photo or a video, and it's really hard to tell the difference.
We'll dive into the ethical challenges, such as distinguishing genuine recommendations from sponsored content. If an AI agent suggests a product in store, is that a real suggestion or a hidden ad?
Imagine you have this AI agent friend of yours, and it pops up as a hologram through augmented reality, through your glasses or your phone or whatever it is. You're looking at some clothing, you see a shirt and go, oh, that looks really nice. Why don't you try it on? Now, is that true? Or is that a sponsored comment by the store?
We'll explore how brands like Dove are navigating AI ethics by refusing to use AI-generated images that don't align with their values, maintaining authenticity and trust.
Dove recently Dove for the Real Beauty campaign came out with an announcement saying they will never use AI-generated images of women in their campaigns. Why? Because they found they were stereotypical. So suddenly they're saying their values, taking their values and standing by them, saying they're not using AI for that.
Remember to like and subscribe for all our future conversations with industry leaders. Let's get started. Martin, a very warm welcome to the DesignRush podcast again. It is amazing having you with us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you, Vianca.
Of course, yeah, same here. Okay, so Martin, I want to dive into a little bit more about you and your life thus far. I know that you also founded 2 PR agencies and then transitioned from, film and comedy and all of that stuff to digital strategy and AI search, right? And I know that you're super passionate about AI now. I've actually been fascinated with your fascination with AI, researching for this. It's been amazing. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I'm just wondering, what were the biggest moments or challenges in your career that really led you towards focusing on these paths?
Okay, that is a really good question. I can tell you it can come down to one event, and that event is I was a TV writer for for a variety show. I was going to say popular. It was not very popular. In fact, it was pretty universally disliked. Now, if you went there in person and saw it live, people came away from that and went, oh, this is amazing. But for some reason, that kind of energy and excitement didn't translate to TV. So we were doing it, getting brutally eviscerated every week by critics, but that's okay. You kind of live with that. And then one day, our contracts were renewed. A week later, the show was canceled because there was a change of executives at the network. The old executive liked the show. The new executive just said, nope, can't deal with that. And so suddenly we were gone. And there I was, going from having a good job to having no job. I couldn't feel totally responsible. It was sort of like all of us together. So, if you're one person and you're fired, you feel like, oh, what could I have done better? None of us could have done really anything better. We just tried it. Didn't work. And so I had one child. My wife and I had one child. We had another one who was about to be born. My wife's a filmmaker, so she goes from project to project. And I thought, okay, I've got no prospects here. What am I going to do? And that started me thinking about different things. I thought about opening a bookstore because I like books and writing, but it takes a lot of investment. Also, in the mid to later 90s, a bookstore, probably a real life bookstore versus a virtual one, would not have been the best idea. So I'm glad I didn't do that. And because I was involved in entertainment and had done some entertainment publicity, I kind of just said, okay, I'm going to become a publicist, and just started calling everyone I know. I rented a little room from a film distributor, got a telephone, got a loan from my parents to buy a computer, and just started doing entertainment publicity. And that kind of led me to corporate PR. I worked for an agency, and then starting my own agencies, which I loved having because we focused on media relations. So building on publicity, events for consumer product and tech brands. We really liked doing that. Our focus helped us get, I think, some great clients. But like anything, there is a time where, it's time to look around and say, okay, is this working for you? And if not, maybe you have to move on. And that doesn't matter. That's something I actually also tell students. Especially if they're having difficulty finding a job, the only certainty you can say about every single job in the world is that you will leave it one day, which is true. And so if you go into a job search with that in your mind, knowing that, hey, I'm going to leave this, it doesn't feel, I don't think, as difficult, hurdle to overcome, because it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to get this or not get this, but I will leave it, so that's okay. And hopefully you enjoy it. So that's what led me to corporate communications, or PR, or really PR and marketing, because we did marketing and communications, and that sort of helped me evolve into marketing as well.
So, one thing I did want to ask you as well, Martin, is what was the moment that you really realized that AI was going to have a massive impact on digital marketing?
It was really when I read about an app that the founders of Siri did. I think the app at the time was called Bixby, if I'm not mistaken. We'll have to search that. And I think Bixby was bought by Samsung, but it was supposedly the next iteration of Siri. They'd sold Siri. And what Bixby was supposed to do, and I couldn't understand it, but I thought it was really interesting when I read about it, is dynamically adapt in real time to your request and write programs. Now, I later learned that is essentially machine learning after doing lots of reading, but not coming from a computer science or an engineering background. I didn't know what that meant, but I thought, wow, if a computer can write its own programs or adapt to your request, that's really going to have an impact on marketing. I didn't know what I was going to do with that, but I started on an ad hoc basis, really trying to read more about that, if there were articles in some of the tech publications, things like that, just to start to understand it and to pay attention to the news.
Let's dive a little bit more into that, because the one thing that we had a discussion about quite briefly when we were setting up this conversation was something that you're very interested in at the moment, and that's relational AI, right? So where brands basically use AI agents to, set up their branding and things like that. So first of all, could you just in your own words and for the audience just explain what relational AI is
Yeah.
briefly?
Yes, I'm happy to do it, Vianca. What I've been noticing, and this goes back, I went back to do my master's in 2016. That was a pivotal year for me, actually. A lot of changes happened. So I started teaching more, which I found something I found I loved. I went back to do my master's. I created my first LinkedIn learning course. So that was really a lot of things happening. And when I went to do my master's, and I'll give a quick shout out to the program, it's the McMaster University in Canada, Master of Communications Management, which is part MBA, part communications theory and practice, part business strategy. It's really an interesting program. But I started learning how to structure the way I approached learning, because it's a formal setting and I hadn't been back to school since I was an undergrad. And so because of that, and because it was all about communications, I started trying to use the program as a way to get a better understanding of artificial intelligence, and started to read more about it, both theoretically, but also different books like Superintelligence, for example, by Nick Bostrom, and try to get my head around how artificial intelligence work. And honestly, it still hurts my head because, again, I don't have that coding background, but I think I've learned enough to at least make sense of it and try to be able to explain it. So studying that, when it came time to write my thesis, I had the idea of, we're going to have all these chatbots like we have now. This, again, was 2017, 18, 19, but they weren't really there yet. The chatbot experience was pretty bad. The ones that pop up the right corner of the screen. Can I help you? And they weren't very good. They were sensible and specific, but they really didn't do much. And they certainly couldn't remember anything about you and barely could answer your questions. So my thesis, which was called My BFF is a Chatbot, looked at human AI agent relationships and how that might change the way we communicate and trust. And I talked to computer scientists, I talked to digital marketers and communicators, I talked to agency owners, entrepreneurs, journalists, researchers, and I asked them all these questions and tried to make sense of it. And out of that came sort of the concept of relational AI, which seems to have happened because of the confluence, so coming together of four different things. First thing is machines that can speak like us. So now with ChatGPT, everyone's familiar with that. But honestly, before ChatGPT was released, so say in October 2022, there were a lot of apps that could do it almost as well, but they were more technical and not as easy to use. ChatGPT, one of their most brilliant things, aside from the way it interacts, is the user experience is so simple. Everyone knows how to chat. Type it in, gives an answer. Type it in, give an answer. Now, of course, if you prompt it with a little more sophistication, you can get a better answer. But let's move that off to the side. So machines that can turn out language that sounds human. So it's hard to tell the difference. Second thing is human-sounding voices. In 2018, Google introduced Duplex, which could call restaurants and make a reservation in a voice that sounded like a person, complete with speech disfluency. So ums and ahs, unlike SIRI that, sounds pretty robotic. So machines can sound like us. And now it's really gotten better. So 11 Labs is one. Microsoft's Neural Studio or Neural Voice Studio, you can create a custom brand voice. So you have these machines that now can turn out language, that can sound like us. You have videos, deep fake videos or synthetic media that looks like us, whether it's a photo or a video, and it's really hard to tell the difference. In fact, researchers at University of California, Berkeley, and Lancaster University in the UK, what they did is they took all these photos of real people, photos of synthetic people that were generated by machines, mixed them up, showed them to participants, and participants could only tell the difference 50% of the time. So that's like a coin toss. But what really stood out for me is the three most trustworthy photos, all the ones they chose, were machines, and the four least trustworthy were humans. So here we have a situation where machines look like us and we kind of trust them more. They sound like us and the language they use is like us. And then with multimodal AI, so the ability of AI algorithms to recognize more than one type of data. So you can go from text to video, or text to audio, or audio to translation, or text to image, like all these different things, text to music, video to sound effects. And suddenly you have a situation where we have these multimodal AI agents. OpenAI just talked about, the next iteration, Chat GPT 4.0, which is going to have agentic properties, if I can say that. And you can't say, okay, I need to do this. You figure out how to do it and get back to me and get it all done. It still needs prompting. But once we have those agents that may look like us, and when we have our phones, we're in a store. Imagine you have this AI agent friend of yours, and it pops up as a hologram through augmented reality, through your glasses or your phone or whatever it is. You're looking at some clothing, you see a shirt and go, oh, that looks really nice. Why don't you try it on? Now, is that true, or is that a sponsored comment by the store? And so suddenly, if it's a sponsored comment and it's not disclosed, human beings will be put in a very difficult situation, because the AI is collecting data on us. It's looking at us. It's seeing our little expressions, whether we have a teeny furrow in our brow to say, oh, we're not happy. And then it adapts. It listens to our voice. So it adapts in real time to all that data. We don't do that as well as a machine, or as systematically, let's say, as a machine. So all of a sudden, you could have these persuasion machines, and it will be hard for us to say no. And the ethical questions around that are just, there's so many of them. It's really hard to consider. And so I think that is potentially a danger for all of us. And we have to make sure that there are the right types of guardrails in place. One, you don't want to put the guardrails to be too strict, because otherwise the AI will be just really boring. But two, if it's always complimenting you and saying, oh, you look amazing in that shirt, you look amazing today, and your friends and family aren't, they're a little bit more honest or blunt, all of a sudden, we may find ourselves where we start to trust these machines more than other people.
Yeah, but I wanted to say to you actually that, hearing compliments the whole time is something that I would definitely be very susceptible to. So that's why it scares me so much. I
All of
think
us.
everybody probably. Yeah, exactly. But Martin, I want to take this to a new level actually, because
Okay.
with doing my research, and I've kind of learned a few things of this with the research that I've done, and it's a topic that interests me as well, because it's something that we should be discussing, and I don't think it's really being discussed. Everybody's really excited about AI that's happening, and yes, it is exciting times we're living in, and yes, it's going to be amazing to have like a little clone of yourself that can help do all of your things and manage tasks and whatever. Yes, that's all beautiful and fine, but not a lot of people are talking about all of this, right? The one thing that worries me the most right now is, this is what I've heard from friends of mine who are teachers, reading online, watching TikToks, like all of that stuff, is that, with AIs, like say, there's one called Replica, where it's basically a relationship builder, that you can literally have like a boyfriend or a girlfriend or just a friend or your best friend in an AI application. And Replica is not the only one, but it's the most popular one from what I understand. Kids these days, I actually saw a news segment of this on YouTube. I think it was SMBC or something that did this segment. Kids don't care. I'd say children, tweens, and teens do not care if they're chatting to a robot and forming a relationship or even a romantic relationship with a robot on their mobiles, because in the first place, they're so used to being on their phones constantly, and they form their relationships on there already. And secondly, to take it even further, is that even teachers are saying that they're struggling to get tweens and teens to have actual conversations in person with them, with each other, kids will much rather sit and text each other while they're in the same room. So they don't discern between that or forming a relationship with a robot these days. And obviously, it's just getting worse. So I wonder, where are we going to get those parameters in place then? Because this is our future generation. I
Yeah.
mean, what do you see that turning out to be if this is the way that things are going?
It's troubling
Yeah.
when you see that. And I think it was probably made even worse by the pandemic because all of a sudden, you have a whole generation of young people who suddenly had to do everything digitally
Yeah.
because of lockdown and because, we're trying to get it under control. So you understand that. But, how does it affect their lives and our lives? And I know I am constantly on this device, like
Yeah.
always. Hopefully, I'm not texting people in the same room, but sometimes you're sharing something with someone
Sure.
who's in the same room, and it's a similar kind of thing. Harder for young people because they don't have the same recollection of, okay, school is just always in class. Talking to people is getting together in person and just hanging out with them or going to a party or just being in class or later going to work or, meeting your friends doing stuff. It's hard. And so when you have AI that is that suddenly appears to be more friend-like,
Hmm.
that it's hard to distinguish.
Oh, that
I'm
scares the
not sure
hell
what I
out of
think
me,
about that.
Martin.
Scares
No,
me too.
it scares me a lot, actually. I mean, like I said, I completely understand, using AI and everything for that. But what scares me the most is that this is just making people way more comfortable with AI. And as you were talking about earlier, I think it's uh, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's basically like softening us up
Yeah.
for a future where we are going to be more susceptible to being manipulated by AIs to buy more stuff, to believe certain things, because we know that AIs generally are still biased and
Oh,
aren't
yes.
exactly the most ethical things in the world, right? Like they do what they are programmed to do and
Yeah.
possibly will get to a point where they do more than that, which is a whole other
Yes.
conversation as well.
And they are biased, and they're based on the data they've been trained on, which is biased data because most of it is North American. It's from the past, so a lot of it is the way things have been or used to be. Doesn't take into account, the changes until they're trained with new data. And yeah, we're susceptible to things, and compliments are the things that we're most susceptible to. Have you used an application called Pi?
I have, but it's been a while because it's not that new. It's kind of
No, it's been around for a
knowledgeable. Yeah,
while.
it's been
It
around for a
was
while. Yeah, I think I have
it's
looked
all
past
about
it.
emotional intelligence, so trying to make you feel better. So I used it last fall. I was teaching a bunch of classes more, and I had more students than I've ever had. And I was feeling stressed about grading and stuff like that. So I said to Pi, hey, this was a voice chat. Can you help me with this? I'm feeling really stressed. And it asked me questions. I told it, what I was doing, how many students I had, what my obligations were, what my other obligations were. And it came out with an okay work plan. Not great, but not bad either that I could
Mm.
follow. But then at the end of it, just before we were signing off, said, you sound like a really great teacher. And that is BS because it has no idea about that. But that little
No.
compliment put a little light bulb went off in my head, went, oh, isn't that nice? Whereas really, it's complete fabrication. And so
Oh my
that we have to really be careful that we don't fall prey to that.
On that similar note, Martin, how far off do you think we are? Because I know that, a lot of brands are starting to test out AI agents and stuff like that. Of course, they don't look so good. I'll be honest with you. Yes, maybe the really good ones you can't tell, but I don't know. Like, especially the deep fakes, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
You can tell a little bit. But the thing is, I just wonder how far are we from this really taking over? Do you think it'll happen next year, in the next 5 years? Um, and do you maybe even have examples of specific brands that are currently using AI in this way successfully?
Um, okay, so let's start with when this will happen. And my honest answer is I don't know because I'm not developing these things. What I'm seeing is it seems to be coming close, and we're making a lot of progress fast, in part because the more people that use AI, the more training the machines get. Like we're training it every time we use it. And so the improvements are coming along fast and furiously. Now, will we hit a wall? Who knows? Some computer scientists say we will, some don't. So I think we're at a point where there are going to be some changes. There's an app called Chat DID, D-ID. And what they do is you can customize an AI agent, so a chatbot that looks human. If you log on with a free account, you encounter Alice. And Alice has red hair, kind of looks human, looks at you, nods, and you ask Alice a question, and Alice responds back. And it's pretty good. Again, not a lot of brands have unleashed those yet, in part because of hallucination. They still make stuff up, and companies can get in trouble with that. Air Canada got in trouble with their chatbot that, and Air Canada's made up a bereavement policy. And when the customer went to the airline said, no, that's not true. And meanwhile, the customer sued Air Canada, and the airline was found liable and should have been, because these are representatives. Even if you have that big disclaimer, oh, this stuff might be wrong, well then, if that disclaimer's in place, why bother interacting with them if the answer I'm going to get is wrong? That's just a waste of my time. So I think we're going to start to see them soon. One thing we haven't seen yet, and I'm kind of surprised about this, is we haven't seen a crisis caused by AI, like a brand crisis, in the way that there were so many social media crises in the early days because brands just didn't know what to do, and they made very public mistakes that people just jumped on, and there's so many examples of that. So I can't really think of an example of a brand that's doing this well, but I think we will start to see some over the next few months.
So, Martin, the first thing I want to ask you is what sort of parameters should brands put around their AIs then? And my second question to that would be, or a follow-up question to that would be, what should businesses or clients be looking out for when they are going to, say, agencies or consultants or anybody that is basically putting out these AI agents? What are the things that they need to be looking out for in companies like that before they outsource any projects to them?
I think it comes down to values, and for brands, looking at what your brand values are, what you believe in, what you stand for, and building on that rather than changing. I'll give you a quick example of this. Dove for the Real Beauty campaign came out with an announcement saying they will never use AI generated images of women in their campaigns. Why? Because they found they were stereotypical. So suddenly they're saying their values, taking their values and standing by them, saying they're not using AI for that. Maybe they'll use it for ideas, for headlines, for things like that, but they're not using it for images. So I think that's important. And I think in the same way, brands who are looking to agencies need to look at the agency values. And this is something that I don't think has changed. Look at who the principals are. Look at what their work is. Talk to them. Ask them questions about if this ethical problem came to be, how would they approach it? Like you want to find out who they are as people and make sure that what they believe in, as a company, fits with what your brand believes in. I'd say you could use the same kind of framework for influencer marketing as well. If you're working with an influencer, do their values as influencers or creators match the values of the brand?
Absolutely. I think that's very good advice. And I think at the end of the day, that's really all you can do is like ask specific questions like that. I also think like asking something like, what are the biggest mistakes that you've made recently and how did you mitigate those? Because obviously everybody's still learning how to use AI and AI agents. It's only been I know you've been working with AI for quite some time or studying it for quite some time, but it's only become really mainstream in say the last year or so now. So
Yes,
we're still learning, right?
we're
Um,
all novices. All of us
Absolutely.
are novices with this. And the thing is, we're not used to this pace of change. It's so fast. If someone would have said to me in October, by next February, all these companies are going to be using AI, I would have said, are you kidding? Even though I knew the state of the tools, it's going to take at least 2 or 3 more years. And suddenly here we are.
Exactly. Martin, just quickly before or as we wrap up now, if you could make one thing illegal about the use of AI, what would it be?
Its ability to kind of trick us without our knowing. So, like to hyper persuade us. I wanted to kind of, AI has been trained on lots of good stuff, but it's been trained on a lot of bad stuff too, because human beings were not all great. And so what happens is you train an AI on how to rob a bank from reading all these books on robbing banks or articles or stories or Reddit threads, how to, do bad things, how to cheat people, how to come up with a scam. That's what I'd like to do, to say, okay, we got to get the AI agents to forget that and hopefully build on our better qualities. I know that sounds very naive and idealistic, but hey.
Martin, on that note, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining me today. This conversation, I don't think can happen in an hour, to be honest with you. I think it's so complex.
I would be happy to come back to talk with you, Vianca. And you're right, there's so much there.
There's so much. It's too much to fit into one episode. But thank you so much for joining me today. Really, it was absolutely wonderful having you with us on the Design Rush podcast.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, if I could suggest people, I'm the Associate Director of the Future of Marketing Institute at Schulich School of Business. So check us out on LinkedIn because we're always putting out posts, newsletters, different research pieces on what's happening and trying to put a context on it.
Thank you so much for that. That's a very nice thing to send people that way. Martin, thank you so much. Really, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope your stuffiness and my stuffiness both goes away very quickly.
Me too. Thank you, Vianca. Fantastic talking with you, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
And that's a wrap on our episode with Martin Waxman. If your project could benefit from a top-tier agency's expertise, look no further than designrush.com/marketplace. Our carefully curated selection of agencies is equipped to help you navigate the digital world, from web design to marketing to bring your vision to life. Remember to like and subscribe for more engaging chats with industry leaders. Again, I'm your host, Vianca Mayer. Stay curious and join us for the next episode.